The boardroom fell silent as Aubrey Thompson slammed the framed photo of her wedding onto the polished mahogany table, her voice steady but edged with steel. "Heaven is my wife, and I'm done pretending she doesn't exist just so this company can keep its precious image." Gasps rippled through the 12 executives like a shockwave, and Aubrey felt the familiar knot in her stomach tighten. The same knot that had kept her closeted for 8 years while she built Thompson Creative into a billion-dollar marketing powerhouse in Manhattan. She had rehearsed this moment in the mirror every morning for weeks, but nothing prepared her for the way her mentor, Richard Langford, leaned forward with genuine disappointment in his eyes. Aubrey's heart hammered as she scanned the faces around her. Some looked stunned, others outright hostile. She had known the risks. Coming out publicly at the annual shareholder gala last night had been her choice. A deliberate act after Heaven begged her to stop hiding. "I'm tired of being your secret," Heaven had whispered the night before, tears glistening in her dark eyes. Now at 36, Aubrey stood in the same charcoal power suit she wore to close million-dollar deals, but today it felt like armor against the very people who had once toasted her success. The board chair, Margaret Klein, cleared her throat and tapped her gavel. "This vote is not personal, Aubrey. It's about fiduciary duty. Our conservative clients, Blue Chip Insurance, the Harriman Foundation, they've already threatened to pull accounts. We cannot afford the optics of a lesbian CEO in this climate." The words landed like punches. Aubrey's mind raced back to the night she met Heaven Rivera at a quiet Brooklyn bookstore reading 3 years ago. Heaven, a 32-year-old high school literature teacher with soft curls and an infectious laugh, had handed her a dog-eared copy of The Color Purple and said, "You look like someone who needs reminding that love doesn't come with an expiration date." Their connection had been instant, electric, but Aubrey had kept it hidden, terrified of losing the empire she built after clawing her way out of a conservative Ohio family that still sent her Christmas cards signed from Mom and Dad, without ever mentioning her personal life. Now that secret was exploding in real time. Richard spoke next, his voice low. "I've watched you turn this firm around, kid. But the bylaws are clear, moral clause. We have to put it to a vote." Aubrey's palms grew slick. She glanced at the empty chair where her wife would have sat if company policy allowed it. Heaven was waiting downstairs in the lobby cafe, sipping herbal tea and pretending to grade papers while her entire future hung on this room. Aubrey had promised her, no more hiding, no matter the cost. But as the secretary passed out the ballots, the cost suddenly felt astronomical. Her mother's last voicemail echoed in her head. "You're throwing away everything we sacrificed for you, Aubrey. Think of your sister's wedding next month. She doesn't need this scandal." The first votes came in fast. 9 hands rose for removal. Aubrey's breath caught. She had expected resistance, but not this swift betrayal from people she had mentored. Margaret tallied quietly, her face impassive. "We're at 9-2 so far. 1 abstention." Aubrey locked eyes with the youngest board member, Elena Vargas, who had always championed diversity initiatives. Elena's hand trembled as she raised it for dismissal. "I'm sorry, Aubrey. My family's church sponsors half our pro bono work. I can't lose that." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Aubrey's inner voice screamed that she had been naive to believe love could coexist with power in this world. Yet she refused to flinch. "Take your vote," she said, voice rising. "But remember, every client you lose because of prejudice is one we could have kept by standing for something real." The final 2 ballots remained. Richard hesitated, his pen hovering. Aubrey's mind flashed to the mortgage on their Brooklyn brownstone, the adoption papers they had started filling out last month, the way Heaven's laugh filled their kitchen every Sunday morning. If they fired her today, the severance would be generous, but the message would be clear. Love like theirs had no place at the top. The secretary collected the last slips. Margaret's eyes widened as she read the final tally aloud. The room froze. Aubrey's pulse thundered in her ears, waiting for the hammer to fall. Margaret's voice cracked slightly as she announced, 10 for removal, 1 against, 1 abstention. But then she flipped the final ballot, and her face drained of color. "Wait, the abstention just became a no. It's 10-2. Motion fails." Gasps erupted louder than before. Aubrey blinked, certain she had misheard. Richard Langford had been the one to switch at the last second, his ballot marked with a bold NO in black ink. He met her eyes across the table and gave the smallest nod, the kind that said he was risking his own seat for her. "I've buried too many secrets in this industry," he muttered. "Not today." The board erupted into chaos. Margaret slammed the gavel repeatedly. "This isn't over. We'll reconvene in 48 hours with legal counsel. Clients are already calling." Aubrey stood slowly, legs unsteady, the weight of the narrow escape pressing on her chest. She gathered her notes and the wedding photo, clutching it like a shield. Outside the boardroom, the hallway stretched endless, fluorescent lights buzzing like judgment. Her phone buzzed, Heaven texting. "How bad is it?" Aubrey typed back with shaking fingers. "We're still standing. Barely." Down in the lobby cafe, Heaven rose from her corner table the moment she saw Aubrey's face. Her wife's dark eyes searched hers, full of the quiet strength that had kept them going through 2 years of stolen weekends and coded text messages. "Tell me everything," Heaven said, pulling her into a quick hug that felt dangerously public after years of caution. Aubrey recounted the vote, Richard's surprising pivot, the way Margaret's face had twisted in disbelief. Heaven's hand tightened on hers. "So we fight." The question carried layers. Aubrey knew Heaven was asking about more than the board. She was asking if Aubrey would still choose them when the media storm hit, when her parents threatened to cut contact forever, when the adoption agency might suddenly reconsider their file. They walked out into the crisp October air of Midtown Manhattan, the Chrysler Building gleaming above them like an indifferent witness. Aubrey's mind churned with calculations. Severance clauses, non-compete traps, the pending merger talks with a European firm that had quietly signaled discomfort with American cultural issues. Heaven squeezed her arm. "Whatever happens, I'm not letting you carry this alone." But Aubrey felt the fracture already forming. Back at their brownstone that evening, the silence was heavier than usual. Aubrey stared at the adoption paperwork on the kitchen island while Heaven cooked stir-fry, the scent of ginger and garlic doing nothing to mask the tension. "My mom called again," Aubrey admitted finally. "She said if I don't fix this, she won't come to Thanksgiving. She called you well, she used words I won't repeat." Heaven set the spatula down, shoulders rigid. "I never asked you to choose between me and them." The words stung because Aubrey knew the truth. She had already chosen publicly, and now everyone was paying the price. That night they lay awake, backs touching but minds miles apart. Aubrey replayed every board member's face, searching for allies. Elena's betrayal hurt most. They had bonded over late-night strategy sessions. Heaven whispered, "Maybe I should step back. Take a leave from teaching until the dust settles." Aubrey turned sharply. "No. That's exactly what they want. Us shrinking again." But doubt crept in like fog. Was fighting worth watching Heaven lose the students who adored her? Worth risking the family they dreamed of building? The next morning the headlines hit. Thompson Creative CEO comes out in dramatic boardroom showdown. Aubrey's inbox flooded with interview requests, client cancellations, and one chilling email from the Harriman Foundation. "We regret to inform you." She stared at the screen until Heaven's hand covered hers. "We knew the cost." Yet as Aubrey dressed for the emergency press conference she had called, she wondered if knowing the cost and paying it were the same thing. Downstairs her driver waited, but so did a small group of protesters holding signs that read, "Traditional values only." Heaven kissed her goodbye at the door. A soft press of lips that carried every unspoken fear. "Come home to me, no matter what they say." Aubrey nodded, but the walk to the car felt like stepping onto a battlefield where love itself was the enemy. The press conference room at the Thompson Creative headquarters crackled with tension as Aubrey stepped to the podium, Heaven standing just off camera in a simple navy dress that somehow made her look both vulnerable and unbreakable. Microphones bristled like weapons. "I built this company on honesty," Aubrey began, voice steady despite the cameras flashing. "Today I'm choosing to lead with the same honesty I demand from my team. Heaven is my wife, and our marriage is not a liability. It's the reason I fight harder every day." The room exploded with questions. "Does this mean you'll step down? Have clients already left? What do your parents think?" Aubrey answered each one with facts, but inside she was fracturing. That afternoon the second board meeting convened. Margaret opened with a new motion. Voluntary resignation with full benefits. Aubrey refused before the sentence finished. "I won't be bought off." Richard backed her again, but the votes shifted, now 11-1. The abstention from last time had vanished. Elena had flipped under pressure from her church donors. "This isn't personal," Elena whispered as they filed out, but Aubrey saw the lie in her eyes. Outside, Heaven waited in the hallway, face pale. "They're really doing this?" Aubrey pulled her into the stairwell for privacy, the echo of their breathing the only sound. "I'm not resigning. If they want me gone, they'll have to drag me out legally." Heaven's eyes filled. "And what about us?" The adoption counselor called. "They want another home visit next week." They saw the news. The drive home was silent until Heaven spoke. "My principal suggested I take personal days. Parents are complaining about role models." Aubrey's grip tightened on the wheel. "We knew this could happen, but knowing and living it were worlds apart." That evening Aubrey's sister, Lauren, called from Ohio, voice trembling. "Mom's crying in the kitchen. She says you're destroying the family name." "Aubrey, just tone it down. For us." The plea cracked something deep inside. Aubrey hung up and found Heaven on the couch, scrolling through vicious online comments. "They're calling me your secret toy. Some of my students unfollowed me." Tears slipped down Heaven's cheeks for the first time in months. Aubrey held her, but the embrace felt fragile, like it could shatter under the weight of every sacrifice. The betrayal deepened when Richard texted late that night. "I'm being pressured too. I may have to abstain next round. I'm sorry." Aubrey stared at the screen, the man who had switched his vote now retreating. She paced the living room while Heaven slept upstairs, replaying every choice that led here. The late nights at the office instead of dates, the vacations canceled to avoid being seen together, the ring she had slipped on Heaven's finger in a private ceremony with only 2 witnesses. Had she been selfish? The thought lodged like glass. By dawn she had drafted a counterproposal to the board. A diversity task force, public pride campaign, client education sessions. Anything to prove love didn't destroy value. But when she presented it the next day, Margaret laughed coldly. "Cute. But the clients aren't buying it." 3 major accounts canceled before lunch. Aubrey's assistant quietly updated the org chart with her name in red. Pending removal. Heaven met her for lunch at their favorite cafe. But the usual easy conversation was replaced by careful words. "Maybe we should pause the adoption," Heaven suggested softly, "until things stabilize." Aubrey felt the ground tilt. Pausing meant giving up the future they had planned, the little girl they had already named in their hearts. "No," she said too sharply. "We don't pause our life for them." Yet doubt gnawed. Was she forcing Heaven to choose between teaching and their family, between safety and truth? The third board vote loomed like a guillotine. Aubrey arrived early, carrying a folder of new client testimonials she had begged loyal accounts to write overnight. Heaven had stayed home, claiming a migraine, but Aubrey knew the real reason. Another parent had emailed the school demanding Heaven's resignation. The guilt was crushing. Inside the boardroom the atmosphere had turned glacial. Margaret opened with legal threats. Breach of fiduciary duty, potential shareholder lawsuits. Richard avoided her eyes. Then Elena stood. "I've thought about it. My church pulled funding anyway. I vote to keep Aubrey." The room inhaled sharply. One swing vote. But before relief could settle, Margaret revealed new evidence. Screenshots of old emails where Aubrey had once joked about keeping personal life private. "You lied to us for years," she accused. Aubrey's defense came out raw. "I lied because I knew this would happen. I lied to protect this company I love." The words tasted bitter. Love for the company versus love for Heaven. The scale had tipped publicly, but privately the balance still wobbled. The vote tied at 6-6. Margaret called for a recess. In the hallway Aubrey found Heaven waiting despite the migraine, eyes red. "I quit my job today. The principal said it was best for the students." The sentence landed like a slap. Heaven's career, built on quiet influence and student letters taped to her desk, gone in one morning. "I did it for us," Heaven said. "So you don't have to carry everything." Aubrey pulled her close, but the hug felt like mourning. Back in session the tiebreaker fell to a new board member. A quiet investor named Thomas Hale who had joined only last month. He cleared his throat. "I've watched my own daughter come out and lose everything. I vote no removal." The motion failed again. Aubrey should have felt victory, but the room emptied in stunned silence. Outside, reporters swarmed. Heaven gripped her hand publicly for the first time in daylight. "We're still here," she whispered. But at home that night the cracks widened. Aubrey's mother left a voicemail. "Your father had a heart episode. The doctor says stress." From the news. Heaven overheard and turned away, shoulders shaking. "I'm becoming the reason your family falls apart." Aubrey reached for her, but Heaven stepped back. "Maybe I should move out for a while. Give you space to fix things." The suggestion sliced deeper than any board vote. Aubrey spent the night on the couch, replaying every decision. The next morning she drove to Ohio without telling Heaven, arriving at her parents' tidy suburban home as the sun set. Her mother opened the door, face tight. "You came." The conversation lasted 3 hours, full of tears and accusations. "We raised you to be better than this lifestyle," her father said quietly. Aubrey left with an ultimatum ringing in her ears. "Fix it or we're done." On the drive back she realized the real betrayal wasn't the board. It was her own fear that had kept her hiding so long. Heaven was waiting when she returned, suitcase by the door. "I can't watch you lose them because of me." Aubrey dropped to her knees. "Then don't leave. Help me fight for all of it." The lawsuit arrived by courier the next week. Shareholders claiming Aubrey's personal choices had devalued stock by 12%. Thompson Creative's stock dipped further. Aubrey spent 14-hour days in strategy sessions, Heaven now working part-time at a community center where no one recognized her name yet. Their brownstone felt like a war room. Legal pads everywhere, adoption paperwork buried under court filings. Richard visited one evening, hat in hand. "I'm resigning from the board. I can't watch them destroy you." His support came too late and too small. Heaven poured wine and listened as Aubrey vented. "I'm losing the company I built for us." Heaven set the glass down. "Maybe the company was never for us. Maybe it was always for the version of you that was afraid." The words stung because they were true. That night they argued for the first time in years. Raised voices, old wounds reopened. Heaven accused Aubrey of choosing ambition over honesty from the start. Aubrey countered that Heaven had pushed her to come out before the company was ready. They slept in separate rooms, the silence heavier than any headline. Morning brought a new crisis. The adoption agency officially paused their file, pending review of family stability. Heaven read the letter and cried in the kitchen, the sound breaking Aubrey's heart. "We were so close," she whispered. Aubrey held her, promising, "We'll adopt somewhere else. Or foster. Or nothing at all if that's what you need." But Heaven pulled away. "I don't want nothing. I want the life we planned before the world decided we were wrong." Aubrey's sister Lauren showed up unannounced 2 days later, suitcase in hand. "Mom sent me to talk sense into you." The visit turned into a marathon of tough love. Lauren admitted their parents had stopped speaking to her too when she supported Aubrey publicly. "But I'm here because I see how happy Heaven makes you." For the first time Aubrey felt a crack in the family wall. That weekend the four of them, Lauren, Aubrey, Heaven and a surprise visit from Richard, sat around the dining table drafting a public statement. "We're not apologizing," Aubrey insisted. "We're doubling down." Heaven nodded, eyes fierce again. "Then let's do it right." The press release went viral. Thompson Creative stands with its CEO and her wife. Client cancellations slowed. A few progressive brands even reached out. But inside the company morale fractured. Aubrey walked the halls hearing whispers. One afternoon Elena cornered her in the elevator. "I flipped back because I realized I was being a coward. I'm with you now." The apology felt hollow after the damage, yet Aubrey accepted it. Home that night Heaven cooked their favorite meal. Pasta with fresh basil from the windowsill garden they had planted together. Over dinner she said quietly, "I got a job offer in Boston. Far from all this." Aubrey's fork froze. "You'd leave." Heaven met her eyes. "Only if you come with me. Start over. No boardrooms. Just us." The offer hung between them like a lifeline and a noose. Aubrey stood at the window overlooking the Brooklyn skyline, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. Heaven's Boston offer sat on the counter like a loaded gun. "We could be anonymous there," Heaven had said. "No one would care who we are." The temptation clawed at her. Sell the brownstone, walk away from the lawsuits, rebuild somewhere the past couldn't reach. But the company she had poured her life into, the late nights, the wins, the culture she had shaped, would collapse without her. Richard had warned her the board was preparing a hostile takeover. Her parents had texted a single word: choose. She turned to Heaven, who waited on the couch with the adoption folder open to the paused page. I can't run, Aubrey said finally. Not anymore. Heaven's face softened with something between relief and grief. Then we stay and we fight dirty. They spent the next week rebuilding from the ground up. Aubrey promoted Elena to co-lead the diversity task force. Heaven started a support group for LGBTQ teachers. Together they attended the next board meeting hand in hand. No hiding. Margaret's final motion died 6-6 with Richard's decisive vote. The company survived. Clients trickled back. The adoption agency reopened their file after public outcry turned into support letters. 6 months later, Aubrey stood on the same boardroom table, this time announcing record profits and a new Pride initiative. Heaven waited in the front row, ring glinting under the lights. Their daughter's adoption papers had cleared the day before. Aubrey's mother had even sent a small card. We're trying. The scars remained, lost friendships, strained family ties, the constant whispers, but so did the truth. Aubrey had paid the price in full and discovered the cost was worth every tear. As the board applauded, Aubrey looked at Heaven and asked herself one final question. Was fighting for their love the right choice? Or did the pain they caused their families and colleagues prove some secrets should stay hidden forever?